explosive presentation coming. This is a huge video. I'm heading to Washington, D.C. Got a prestigious invite. I'm not going to release the date. I'm keeping that under wraps, but I'm going with just one flyer, one presentation. I'm going to be handing out at the White House at the gate, and I'm going to have a little display. I have to follow American laws. The National Park Service has a whole bunch of things I have to checklist in order to do that as a Canadian or even just as an American. So I'm going to comply with all that. I've got it down to what I need to be compliant with. But I'm giving a presentation. I'm going to give it to all those who do have the invite to the White House. Regular folks, I'm going to be there. I'm going to hand out flyers to them, giving the Canada 51st state, $7 trillion savings to America. Now, a lot of people are dismissing it, including AI. At least AI was. I spent several hours yesterday going through Grok AI on Twitter. You can interact with it just like Ask AI. It's got a more of a made to be more human-friendly tone. It largely uses X as it analyzes all of you on X. I'm not super active on X, so I keep it kind of down. But what's interesting, it even brought up some of your names as I went through things and things you've shared of mine. And that's pretty amazing. But what's happened here is people think, oh, you're not going to get those savings. There's 4 areas I add in my presentation as I've done this detailed analysis over many, many months. In fact, I know healthcare for many, many years, especially Canada's healthcare. Now, folks, why Donald J. Trump wants Canada the 51st state? Just a half hour ago, he did an interview on Fox News. It just got released. It's public for everybody to see. It was the 11 a.m. news. Our clocks have moved ahead of an hour. But neither here nor there. In that interview, he's highly criticized by even Fox News, Democrats and some Republicans alike, for his cuts made by one Elon Musk and this unelected person, self-appointed by president, hasn't had any Senate confirmation. The list goes on. And they hit healthcare in the United States, Medicare, Medicaid. And folks, I've looked at that American system, highly centralized, highly unconstitutional, not an area any of the 50 states wish to address. Why would they? It means changing their tax structure to meet a better healthcare system. They don't want to campaign on raising state taxes, even though they would more than 2.5 times reduce federal taxation in lieu of, just through a regional system. So I have 4 points I hammered through Grok yesterday over several hours. I put a lot of time into this because I didn't like how AI is answering these questions. Ask AI, ChatGPT, even Grok. But Grok is an upgrade. Grok can learn if it's fed things that it can think through. Skills that are of a higher caliber, higher doctorate levels, like legal speak, understanding that when you source reference Oxford against American Webster's, you're going to hit several pitfalls. More than that, well, AI has an instant access to a massive database, meaning AI has tremendous information, can get things spot on. It only works at a limited capacity. It means you have to continually enter in all the formulas into it to do the correct analysis. I caught Grok AI doing this, and I educated Grok AI. I said, listen, remember I taught you this trick? Apply that. Now redo your sources. Go by American on the Webster's side. And when they started doing that and translating everything into American from Canadian Oxford, which is UK Oxford, in fact, it's a multitude, 25% of the world. And of course, when you have 25% of the world hitting your sources against literally only a fraction of that known as America sources, you're going to get skewed results. When AI puts pound for pound sources American versus Oxford and everybody else, and you put it like a per capita per country, everything changes. And then you start adding other things Grok doesn't understand, again through legal speak. And when I did that with Grok, we went from 1 trillion all the way up to my 7 trillion. When I hit Washington, D.C., I'm going to give the $7 trillion savings. It's going to be 4-point healthcare and why Canada, the 51st state. It's going to be an open invite for both Democrats and Republicans. I'm going to go with a picture of Donald J. Trump, the Republican elephant, GOP. Then I'm going to have the Dem side with one Bernie Sanders, and I'm going to have the donkey. And then I'm going to have a number of slogans. It's going to be on my sign in front of the White House. And I'm going to have a stack of flyers that go through the 4 points that no analyst has done yet in the United States, let alone understands the Canadian Oxford system. Again, that's overwhelming in sources, meaning when academics or analysts start looking, they're going to get skewed if they don't understand legal speak. And what do I mean by that? Well, one, there are 3 amendment procedures in the United States of America. You will never get health reform out of the 2 amendment procedures. What are those? Supermajority. You'll never ever get a supermajority. Very hard. I'm not going to say never ever get it, but it could be many, many more decades and actually a huge shift in political will inside the United States that nobody can see right now. I don't. So that supermajority and governor vote is off the table. Then there's the state level amendment procedure where it's born out of the states. It's called the 34-38 rule. No state again, even though it's a constitutional responsibility and privy of the states, not the federal government. It never was. A very old, centralized, socialist system of inequality, aka equity of the person. That's right. 55 Americans have a public health care that costs 2.5 times that of the Canadian model. And it even gets worse, like so many pointed out, when you convert CAD and USD. More than that, what AI doesn't tell you is that for this judicial amendment procedure, meaning only a state can do that, number 1 point, meaning Canada, the 51st state, with its regional health care on the public side, going forward in a 2-tier for America, absolutely cuts down the cost of health care by transferring it back to its state level, where it always belonged. Because, as even AI will point out, healthcare is absolutely of the states. It doesn't work as a federal system rolled out, let alone a deeply centralized system based off an old America under an old constitution, under an old Confederate army that is largely transformed for more than 238 years. 45% of Americans absolutely pay for all of it, but are not entitled to it. If that doesn't scream socialist extremist, I don't know what does. The highest expense in the United States federal budget today. And clearly, why wouldn't it be? It's highly centralized, highly socialist, against every written law of the United States. But yet, here it exists, unmovable, seemingly. Canada, the 51st state, in the first bullet point, can do a judicial amendment procedure. What do I mean? Canada gets into the Union. Canada has universal health care. Much, much cheaper, much, much better upgrade. And we're going to get to it, folks. No, people are saying, no, healthcare doesn't work in Canada, wait times. AI believe that too, because it listens to all of you and reports from supposed academics. Canada has an immigration problem. Point number 2. So Canada does the judicial amendment procedure in SCOTUS, wins that. Easy, hands down, no dispute. Doesn't matter the 6 judges on the Republican side, known as originalist, or the 3 judges known as interpretive. They will see it that way. I'm sorry, and I see that I got some kind of reflection here. Oh well. Jeez, that sucks. The sun's like right there in the peak hole. But anyways, so first is the judicial amendment procedure that can be done by Canada, the 51st state. Canada would absolutely do. And this is why, folks, bankruptcies, health bankruptcies, the largest source, 75% of all bankruptcies in the United States are traced to healthcare bankruptcies. Canada doesn't have any. You don't go bankrupt in that manner. So Canada would apply because, yes, like Hawaii, we would have universal health care, but we're still on the hook for a federal system that runs in all the other 50 states, meaning Canadians would be on the hook for all that debt and all that cost, instead of putting all the military, all of the people over the age of 65, all of that which is in the American system now, that 55%, onto the Canadian model. And when you do that and you shift taxation to the state level, you save massive money, and you do it in a regional system, not a socialist centralized system like communism. And it's not to slam America, it's just a fundamental truth. Man, that light is bright, eh? I can't believe that's right in there. The sun is like literally in that peak hole. Let me just, because that's burning my eyeballs out. Look at that. Just a little smidge is right where it is. How's that? That's better, eh? Can you believe that? A tiny little hole, the sun's sitting right in it. So folks, first one, the judicial amendment procedure that can only be done by Canada, the 51st state. Once that's done, it's applied universally across every 50 state. All the rest, they have to do it. This takes the federal government off the hook. And they say, you all have to, by law, enforce this. It would be an increase in taxes. 3% tax, like a state tax of 3% would cover that universally across the United States. 2.5 times less than the current tax, debt, and deficit yield from the federal government. Already saved lots. AI already admits that. 1.6 trillion just in that transition. 1.6 trillion. I just beat Elon Musk's Doge by 1.6 times. 1.6 times. But that's not the end of it. That's an incorrect assessment. Because this is all on the idea that Canada's system is based on Canada's immigration, not the rates and system of immigration in the United States. What am I talking about? We become the 51st state. We get imposed immigration system by the United States. Not only does that reduce our immigration 90 times, it reduces 21% of the per person cost of Canadian healthcare. This just reduces another fifth. This puts us all the way up to $2.1 trillion. Because right now, Canadians, your long lines, your broken system of healthcare is 121% that of what it's designed for Canadians, for Canadian contributors, based on your aggressive over 1 million people a year immigration system. When AI factored in that, they go, yes, you're right. We didn't compute that. It does that in just moments. 2.1 trillion. Then there's more. So AI says, you're still not nowhere near the $7 trillion, Dave. And I said, you forgot another factor, a serious factor. The cost of the current private sector coverage. Here's all the things covered in the Canadian model regionally that you agreed would do this. Now let's take the next step and apply that across all 50 states and credit all the businesses, all the individuals in the private system that's not covered in USA now covered in both the 55% plus the 45% who don't get any of it but have to pay for it. When Grok AI did that and goes, oh, you're right, I didn't think of that. We're adopting that state and we're getting the judicial amendment. Pow! We're now at $4.5 trillion. $4.5 trillion. 1 year. We go on and on. Then AI says, you're still not at your 7. And I said, Grok, what are the implications of companies now credited with this $2 trillion that you agreed to, over $2 trillion? What are the implications in America when Americans have that money at their disposal? And it broke it down in 3 different ways that could look. Anywhere from all of it to companies, a 3-way share, meaning R&D, and then back into American pockets. When we went through all that, it's a competitive advantage down to American investment into GDP. It's an increase. Raising the bar of GDP by more than $2.4 trillion. And when Grok AI does that, and it ranges depending on which 3 ways you go, Democrats will want to do a different source than that. Republicans obviously will want to go with the companies, but if you do a halfway in between, you've increased the GDP over $2 trillion a year. You've also increased productivity of the American people without the stress of health bankruptcies, without the stress of all of that, in a reasonable immigration system. And Grok comes out just over $7 trillion effective savings by increasing the GDP, increasing American corporate ability to compete on the world stage. You've increased the GDP so much that creates the revenue, putting you up at $7 trillion 1 year of all 50 states being forced into that compliance. $7 trillion. Think about that, all Americans and Canadians. I'm going to break that down. And that's what happens when you blindly follow AI and you don't stay in your mental capacity, your lanes. Now, Ask AI and ChatGTP did all the same stuff, messed it all up real bad. And do you know what Grok was able to do from the first answer Grok gave me saying, oh no, I'm not as accurate as ChatGTP or Ask AI. They're factual based and blah, blah, blah. That was the first answer, and they said that was all correct. And then all the way through this process, I said, I'm going to teach you something, Grok. And at the end, I want you to go back to our first question, and then that you said they were accurate and that they're more factual. Who's more factual now, Grok? You or ChatGTP and Ask AI? Would you change your answer? And guess what Grok said? Yes, I changed my answer. No, it was really funny. I went back and did the question with Ask AI and ChatGTP, putting in the variables, and they had already upgraded and changed. They had already changed somewhat. They're still at the $4.5 trillion. They won't take the leap for productivity because they say, well, you don't know that that's going to happen. And we're only guessing because it can't guess. It can't do that kind of reasoning. It's not at that level. It doesn't have that human ability. Doesn't know which of the three forks the U.S. government would go. And it's true. But either way, whether you say 6.1 or just over $7 trillion, does it really matter at that point? That is massive amounts of money. Now, I'm going to go there. I'm not giving anyone the date because I don't trust the Canadian government. I could see me having flight problems, cancellations, or other at the airport the day of, and it's happened before. Just not going to risk it. You're all just going to have to fly by the seat of your pants and see me there when the date comes. Other than that, I won't be disclosing. You're just going to see me one day. Snap, here's my live. Here I am. And of course, the 2 days I'm going to be there, I'm going to publish everything absolutely day one when I land. Say, hey, everybody, I'm doing this. Go ahead, advertise it out there, let people know. But that's what I'm doing. It's a monumental shift. It's a major win for North America and Canada, the 51st state. Monumental. And for all those in all of these other directions, including AI answers, I even had AI backtrack on resources as they're going with the news media. You can see the corruption of Oxford. The corruption of Oxford, because the sources, again, why? There are 54 nations based out of the Oxford defining in this world. It's 25% of the world's population. And if they're all thinking the same, speaking the same, big America, economically and everything and influence, becomes very tiny America. You've already heard J.D. Vance and Donald J. Trump talk about these things and the problems with AI, and as they go after these countries which are seeing. And of course, the corrupt media is doing it too. If you think Fox News is friendly to the presidency, they're not. They're not. They're just as bad as the rest of them. In fact, in some respects worse, because it's the one who pretends to be your friend and lies to your face. In Canada, I know this to be absolutely true with the Conservatives. Why I'm always on Pierre Poilievre and so many Conservative premiers, everybody, is not because I'm Liberal or NDP or Green or Bloc and all these radical socialist extremists, fascists. The reason why, the real fascist story, the reason why I don't hammer on them and I hammer on the Conservatives or Maxime Bernier and People's Party of Canada is because they're lying about who they really are. They're lying to you. They're pretending to be a friend, manipulating you. Albertans are waking up to that with Danielle Smith, who's under her belt hired. Stephen Harper, she's in bed with Pierre Poilievre, literally, not figuratively. CPC, it's always a con job with these parties. As an Albertan, you get to learn this if you stay the course over many, many years. I watched her floor cross from Wild Rose get elected on hopes and dreams of Albertans, just to find out she's really just a conservative, liberal, progressive conservative, that original evil, Laurentian evil. And they're the liars, the worst liars, because to your face, they pretend to be all these things, but you elect them and they deliver all of the liberal policies you never wanted and they never campaigned on. That is the worst kind of liar. The liar who pretends to be your friend, who drives the dagger right in your back as the people. And that is what I fight the most, because that is the worst kind of person. Really is. I know the evil in front of me with the Liberals, NDP, Bloc, Green, and all of these other socialists. You know it. They don't lie about it. They're upfront and truthful. They're proud of that. Whereas the Conservatives pretend to be all these other things, but effectually, every time they're elected, they go right into the same lanes as the others with monumental, minute differences. Always on the social spectrum, never the physical or meaningful perspective that the Canadian people live and die by every day. So many of you in a mass majority who get up and go to work every day, you're the real physical conservative, even with your skewed social values or manipulations by the institution known as Canada. You may be manipulated that way, and I may disagree with that like a lot of folks do. We call that right or left, but really it's about the autocracy that no one likes to talk about, that they're all up here in an autocratic regime trying to slave you. And you're supposed to be down here running government effectually as the people. That's where we need to be, in that statehood. And that brings forward the physical conservative. And that is something that none of these people want to do. This is an attack on America right now. It's really at the heart of the war on America. It's trying to break the Republicans into that mold. Now, it hasn't succeeded across the 50 states. The Republican states have held out forever. And even in fact, the Democrat states are largely there too. There's only two that start to stray from that truth. But a bulk of America at the state level and the sovereignty level of the people at the 50 state level, they are very physically conservative. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, Democratic states largely beat Canada hands down on physical conservatism. Serious physical conservatism. They will never get to that idea of campaigning on taxation. None of them will vote for that. Canada does that. We streamline what the savings are, and we also prove that Canada, as the 51st state of the Union, would be able to force all the 50 into it. And it really is do you want to spend this lesser amount of money now in a regional system, decentralized, completely decentralized, like AKA exactly what America's supposed to be, on your number one expense, healthcare, enshrining Canada's model that's vastly superior to yours, but is being eroded by mass immigration and overabundance put on the backs of a system that then is operating more than 2.5 times its capacity compared to the United States. Think about that. And still half the cost. But when you factor all that in and convert them to even USD, you realize there's trillions and trillions of savings, let alone the effectual transformation in the corporate American world, making American companies massively more competitive. Because right now in Canada, companies aren't competing with American companies in healthcare. And if you think that's some kind of little cheap thing, think again. It's 2.5 times the cost of our regional system put on Americans every day on their paychecks, split between companies and the people. And AI just went poof. Wow. We've never looked at it through the lens of Webster's when we go over your system, when we do legal speak. When they do that, it transforms. So far, Grok is the only one capable of doing this. Grok's changeable, teachable, and it's amazing because I get there, and of course I screenshotted all that, and I'm going to put those little points in my flyer. Just a 4-point system, and I'm going to put Grok and Grok sources in there, Grok AI, and I think that's going to revolutionize the way both Republicans and Democrats look at things. The big slogan on the sign will be, "We are stronger together." It's not what USA can do for Canadian politicians, but what Canadians can do for Americans. That's going to be all about that. Picture of Donald J. Trump, the elephant, picture of Bernie Sanders, the donkey, and $7 trillion is a big title. $7 trillion savings, universal health care, Canada, the 51st state. That's what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to have those flyers, hand them out to everybody going into the White House, as I won't be allowed to, at least on day 2, and we'll see how that goes. I'll shoot it all live. God bless everybody. Share, share, share. Get this truth out there. It's done. It's real. It's credible. 100% verifiable. Resources are of the state. There's no State of the Union where the federal government's raping them of resources. No such thing. You can't find one example in all 50. In fact, while people lose their resource rights depending on the state, that's possible to constitute. You'll see a lot haven't done that and actually at the state level made new laws. I don't see Canada, the 51st state, being any different. Canadians' biggest flaw is they can't visualize a district system, let alone all the overlapping district systems, even though you have a healthcare district system, a regional healthcare district system that is not provincially based, funded provincially, but not provincially based. And yet you can't make that transition. Somehow you're blind to that, just as Americans can't make the transition that everything else they have is a district system except for healthcare, a centralized, completely socialist system to the extreme. That's the public, not private, folks. But by transitioning into a district system that fits everything that's in America today, outside of healthcare, when you transition to what they're supposed to be, using the Canadian model of what they're not supposed to be, ironically as that is, America saves a lot of money. America's federal deficit disappears to the point where they're not only a balanced budget, there are many trillions of dollars underneath their ceiling, meaning they can start paying off their debt in a record amount of time. Not impossible, never going to happen, but just in maybe 30 years, 3 decades, and USA can have a federally balanced budget. God bless everybody. Share, share, share. Get this out there. Credible, real, verifiable. Gave 4 points. Clearly myth busts anything anyone says. Revolutionizes AI. Transforms AI, at least at some levels. And remember, AI is a big database, but AI only gives you the average result. It can't do critical thinking, critical calculations, or critical problem solving. They can't, or critical analysis at even more than the average level. And that's the best way to explain it. So if you're below average in things, AI is great for you. But always check the references. If you're above average, and a lot of people know this in their key areas, that AI doesn't function well for them. If they're already above average, AI is kind of garbagey. Lots of areas I look into, I go, AI is very weak, still very weak, gives you an incompetent answer ultimately because it's just at an average level. Huge database, average thinking, average problem solving, never above average. God bless everybody. Bye now.